I can't never get enough of those videos. Like just how lively all of those games seem.
Yeah.
Welcome everybody here to Basketball Passport. I'm Anthony Irwin, joined as always on this Sunday evening by Leigh Ellis. That is in Buenos Aires. That video that you just saw there. We're going to be going back there later in the show as we get part two of a recap of Leigh's recent trip there. Today on the show, we're going to be talking about the Sacramento Kings and the role that they are on since firing Mike Brown. We're going to be talking about the Miami Heat winning without Jimmy Butler. And Zion Williamson made his grand return to the court and was promptly suspended. so we're
Man.
we're going to talk about all that good stuff and then whatever happens to come up over the course of the show as well. Please, as a reminder, hit that subscribe button if you guys are watching live on YouTube. If you guys are watching on Twitter, head on over to youtube.com/@basketballpassport. If you want to interact with the show, shoot us an email at the nice and easy to remember email, basketballpassportpod@gmail.com. All of that good stuff. Leigh, it is a wild card weekend Sunday evening. The football, honestly, has been pretty bad. Hasn't been very good.
Right.
The basketball actually has been rather good. The Celtics are currently in a tough game as we are recording this. How are you holding up? Like, is this the event that it is in the Ellis household that it is everywhere else in America?
Well, look, we're just getting out of the snow we had here in Atlanta. We actually finally had real snow fall.
Man,
So my
I'm
two
jealous.
boys were thrilled. They got the day off school, so they were really pumped Thursday night. But I said to them, boys, listen, we've had these forecasts before.
Yeah.
Usually when the snow comes in Atlanta, it doesn't stick around. So don't get your hopes too high here, please. But they didn't want to hear it. They were like, we got the day off. They told us 5 inches of snow's coming. And they woke up Friday morning and it was layered. And they were
Yes.
outside. They were outside at 7 a.m. throwing snowballs at each other. Dad, get the phone out, take a photo, get the camera going. Ah, man, it was great. But as you know, when snow first falls, it's great. Everyone's playing,
Yeah.
having a good time. But then when you try to drive anywhere, you got to go and do stuff. You just can't do it. I mean, the city's just not equipped to handle it. Our car's not equipped to handle it. So, yeah, Friday and Saturday, we stayed pretty much at home, which was fine. The boys had a great time. But then you're just
Yeah.
like, all right, today I was trying to go and do some grocery shopping. Everyone else is out on the roads. People are driving like they don't care. They go to the grocery store and at Trader Joe's and the trucks hadn't delivered the goods. So everyone was trying to just fight over what was left on the shelf. So, yeah, it was great. It was great fun. But we made it here to Sunday night.
It was great. It's great. It's fantastic. It was really good. We haven't had any snow here. It snowed everywhere else in Texas except where I live.
Right.
But a few years ago, this is a story that always gets a chuckle out of people. A few years ago, we had that big freeze that kept
Yes.
people in their houses for the entirety of a week out here. It is referred in my neighborhood to as Snowvid. What we
Right.
went through. And I remember looking at the forecast and I told Jen, I was like, hey, and at that time we had a Mazda CX-5 and we had a Toyota Prius. So we were not ready for any kind of
Yeah.
snow whatsoever. Since then we have bought a larger all-wheel drive SUV just in case. But back then I told Jen, I was like, hey, I don't think we're going to be able to leave the house for a few days. I'm going to hit we have like a little kind of grocery store, like gas station grocery store down the street called Foodies. And I was like, hey, I'm going to hit Foodies really quick and just see what's there because I don't think we're going to be leaving the house anytime soon. And she goes, oh, stop it. Whatever you want to do. So I go there, I get the essentials, red wine, beef jerky was all that was left. And I figured that would actually stay whether the refrigerator was on or off. And then I hit the chip section, the potato chip section. As those of you who are watching or who have checked out my content before know, I'm Mexican. So my preferred chips are very different from most people around me out here in suburban Texas, suburbia. And so I go to the chip section and all of the like Lay's were gone. A lot of Pringles all gone. But all of my chips, all of my
Ah, it's all
like,
coming up, Anthony. It's all turning your way.
and so I walk back into the house and Jen goes like, "All right, what'd you find? What'd you find?" I was like, "I'm gonna be set. You
Yeah.
might you might have to make it work or whatever." But no, I was bummed. We were supposed to get some snow, we didn't, and it just wound up being kind of like really cold rain that we got, which is
Yeah.
the worst that you could
Gross.
get.
Yeah.
So, are everybody safe though? House like stayed lit up, all that good stuff?
Yeah, no dramas, no problems anyway that I can see so far. Just a few wet sneakers and socks and things like that tracked into the house because we had a couple of boots that just hadn't been worn for a while. When we've traveled to Canada, we've always, especially at Christmases, we've taken the snow gear, but the boys, they grow quickly, so some of those boots they've outgrown them, so they had to wear some sneakers, and some neighbors came good with some shoes and things like that. So we got through it. We survived. But they're like now, like, all right, we want snow every weekend, and we want a day off school. And I'm like, well, I'm not sure I can. I'm not sure I can do that for you, but at least it should keep them quiet for a little bit of time here.
Yeah, like I said, jealous, but you're absolutely right though. Like the first day of snow is fantastic.
Ah, it's awesome.
The
Yeah,
every day after that is just like
yeah,
go away. Like this
yeah.
is
Ah,
just kinda,
as I was saying,
um
driving is the worst. Yeah,
yeah. What kind, like, do you guys have a car equipped for snow?
absolutely
No.
not. No, we have a little Nissan Leaf, a little get around. It just does enough to
Oh
get us
man.
around. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I got new tires on it just before Christmas, so it's actually got some good grip there. But no, no, no. You need a vehicle that's can handle these conditions, and we don't have one. So yeah, today wasn't too bad. But again, it warms up pretty quickly. We had tons of sun, so it's all melting away. But
Yeah.
yeah, you see
Well,
those big F-150 trucks, they love it because they're like, this is our time to shine. We find, the dudes who go driving in the F-150 to do the grocery shopping and drop the kids off school, totally don't need it for that. But when it snows, it's like, all right, this is this is what I got it for.
my $75,000 truck worked
Exactly.
for one day
Yeah.
in the last
Yeah.
5 years.
Uh,
All right, let's go ahead and dive
yeah.
on into the show. Let's start with the Sacramento Kings, talking about weird decisions that wind up working out. The Kings fired Mike Brown, lost their first game against the Lakers after firing Mike Brown. Interim head coach Doug Christie, however, has won all of the games since that Lakers loss. Um, this is always a weird one because Mike Brown, objectively good coach,
Mhm.
coming off of a unanimous coach of the year campaign. Clearly, I think had lost the locker room. I think the front office last year, the team got smaller when it was already, I thought, too small. So the roster was kind of flawed. They brought in DeMar DeRozan, and they celebrated the fact that a free agent finally signed in Sacramento. Um, I just don't think it had been working out to this point. There were reports that came out. Lou Williams reported. By the way, Lou Williams, former teammate of DeMar DeRozan, reported that DeMar DeRozan was asked at one point to maybe come off of the bench. Um, I quick aside, really funny that DeMar DeRozan said that to Lou Williams as if it's some kind of disrespect when Lou
Yeah.
Williams, a career six man, is
Yeah.
like, oh man, yeah, how dare they ask you to come off of the bench? What do you think though of the Kings' run since Mike Brown has been fired?
Well, the thing that really shocked me is, hearing what guys have been saying now in those subtle digs when asked about, oh, well, the ball's moving around, we understand our roles as more direction and things like that. That to me is a real telltale sign there, like you mentioned, that Mike Brown had actually lost the locker room.
Yeah,
Because when he got fired, I was like, Vivek, remember the Maloofs when the Maloofs
yeah,
got bought
Kangs.
out? It was
Mhm.
like, oh my God, anyone, literally anyone will be better than the Maloofs. And then Vivek made some terrible decisions, firing coaches way too soon, hiring the wrong coaches.
Michael Malone,
Yeah,
championship
exactly.
head coach.
Exactly. And,
Was
and
fired
Mike
by
Malone,
Sacramento.
had some comments as well saying, well, I've been fired by that guy. He's a clown. And I think the general basketball community was like, you just extended Mike Brown. Like, he's a good coach. You have to ride this patch out. He got you to the playoffs for the first time in 16 years. Things were moving in the right direction, even if they took a little step back, last season and so far this season. But stick it out, ride it with a coach for some time. But now with 7 straight wins, including a huge one in Boston, that's the sort of game that stands out for me because, they just beat the Bulls. Okay, the Bulls are all over the place. Who really knows what's happening there? But to get that win in Boston, I think is fantastic. And Fox has been out for a few of these games as well. So Doug Christie, was clearly ready for the role and was able to communicate pretty effectively and has the respect of the players because they're playing hard again, and that's where it sort of, you look at it and you just go, well, the results are there. And so I will apologize to Vivek and Monty McNair because I was like, this is a terrible decision, just another typical Kings impatient, throw the baby out with the bathwater move. But so far, it's worked really well and they're playing fun basketball again. So I don't know if Doug Christie is the long-term solution. This could be just the honeymoon period that we often see with a new coach. But so far, the results are working wonders. And Keon Ellis is one of the players who's been getting a lot more minutes, getting a bigger role. He's shooting the 3, he can play D. So, it's working right now. And I think you could not find someone who would have said it would have gone this way when they fired Mike Brown. And if you did, you would have said, well, that person has no idea what they're talking about. This is the Kings after all. So I think good on them. It's good to see them, maybe you've made the right decision, even if it didn't feel like it was at the time.
Do you think it's sustainable though? Like, do you think this is that's the part of it, is that like you always see, because remember the reports that came out after Mike Brown was fired was that he wanted more out of De'Aaron Fox, and wanted more in the form of leadership and commitment to like things that win basketball games from their superstars. And then, obviously there was also the report I mentioned earlier about, asking DeMar DeRozan potentially to come off of the bench. I don't think any of the things that were reported that Mike Brown was asking for were dumb. Now, the Keon Ellis thing, I think, is a great thing to bring up. Sacramento Kings fans that I followed had all been kind of clamoring for him to get more minutes all year. He does get more minutes. The defense gets better. And I think that has been one major difference between Christie and Brown's tenure this year. But yeah, how much of it do you think is just like a vibe improvement, or how much of it do you think is actually sustainable?
Well, look, they've got the Bucks on the road next. Then they go home for 3 at home against the Rockets, Wizards, and Warriors. And they've already smashed the Warriors in Golden State by 30 on this run. So, look, the Bucks is going to be – the Bucks is who knows with Milwaukee right now as well. They just got spanked today by the Knicks. They're still, not convincingly, a very good team right now. And the Rockets, they're at home against the Rockets. I think that's going to be a good test. But then they probably should win the next 2 after that against Washington and Golden State. Then it gets a little tougher because they go on a big, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 game road trip, including the Knicks, the Nuggets, Oklahoma City, and Minnesota. So that's you're probably going to get more of an idea. That's going to be about 15 to 20 games in or so, and then you'll sort of see what if it's sustainable. Again, if everyone's playing, if De'Aaron Fox is even still there, because clearly, I think what had been happening, and this is totally speculative on my behalf, is that Fox's camp has kind of been saying, "Listen, man, we've been here long enough. It's time for a trade. We want to look around," and because Mike Brown mentioned that in his final presser, he said, "Listen, you can't have 1 foot inside the circle and 1 foot out." And clearly a shot at De'Aaron Fox, who was, again, maybe not asking for a trade, but just throwing it out there to see what the response was going to be.
Rich Paul, De'Aaron Fox's agent, met with ownership, met with the front office, and then a week later, Mike Brown gets fired.
Yeah.
And then the quotes that De'Aaron Fox had after the fact, saying that, like, well, at least he's on a guaranteed contract and he gets paid regardless, didn't exactly quell any,
Yeah.
anybody wondering if De'Aaron Fox's camp was pushing for Brown to be fired.
Yeah, well, and that's right. And so you never really know exactly what the final sort of straw is there. The fact they fired Brown on the way to the airport for a road trip was, not classy, and that's I think what prompted the response from the guys like um, Mike Malone
Malone.
there.
Mhm.
But look, the Kings. It seemed like they had actually secured some stability and some consistency, and a good, reliable coach who was going to be able to get them through this rough patch, and they pulled the trigger too quickly. But again, Doug Christie seemingly he was in the broadcast crew, and he moved to
Yep.
be in with the team. And so apparently, again, this is all speculative because we don't know ourselves. But from what I've been reading, he'd been really good as that sort of conduit between the head coach and the players, and communicated well. So while things are going well, I'm sure that those conversations are a lot easier. The real test will come if they drop now 4 or 5 in a row at some point here with that tough road trip coming up. As I mentioned, they got the Knicks, the Nuggets, the Timberwolves, and the Thunder. So that's going to be a tough test for them. But so far, so good, and that's all that really counts. I think they have got a good roster. I actually think this is a decent team, but I just wonder if the front office now is like, okay, Keon Ellis is maybe a key here for the future. Sabonis is going to stick around. DeRozan's under contract, I think, for 3 seasons. Maybe we just dangle Fox and see what the market is worth it for him, because ultimately, if he wants out, then there's no point in having a player there who doesn't want to be there.
Doug Christie, oddly similar career path as Pat Riley, right? Pat Riley was in the booth, and then an assistant coach, and then an interim coach,
Yeah.
and then became a head coach.
Oh
So
man,
funny little
yeah.
tidbit there. Let's move on to the Miami Heat, also on a bit of a roll here, without a notable player. They suspended Jimmy Butler and promptly went on a bit of a winning streak here. The one thing I will say is that they're probably pretty used to playing without Jimmy Butler, because in the regular season, he does tend to miss quite a bit of time. But you had made a note in the show notes for today's episode whether this impacts Jimmy Butler's trade interest around the league. Do you have a theory on that front?
Well, that first game without Jimmy Butler, they lost at home to the Jazz by 36 points. And it
Tough
was
one.
like, whoa, like that's crazy. Then they lost at Sacramento to the Kings in double overtime, who obviously have been playing well. But since then, 3 on the road, including another game against the Jazz. They've beaten the Warriors, the Jazz, the Blazers, and they've still got both Los Angeles teams coming up here. I believe those games are going to go ahead too. First off, obviously, all our thoughts with everybody affected by these horrific fires out there in Los Angeles.
Yep.
Oh my God, devastating! Absolutely devastating. Especially for everybody. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're a basketball player or not. People are losing their houses, their possessions, everything. So that's very, very sad to see.
Yeah.
But I saw that the NBA announced they're planning on having games in Los Angeles resume tomorrow. So the Heat have a couple. They have the Los Angeles double there. And I think, the initial sort of suspension there of Jimmy Butler, the team was a little bit in shock, but the Heat they don't bow to anybody. And so after that embarrassing loss to the Jazz of all teams, a team that's tanking, they clearly got themselves back on track to say, we need Jimmy Butler to know that we're going to go ahead with or without him. And by them now having won these 3 games in a row, I think it's sort of their message they're trying to show other teams is like, Jimmy, we're just as good with or without Jimmy. Like, it's not like our team's going to fall apart without him. So what value you attribute to that is, like the Heat obviously want maximum return for him, but at the same time, they're sending a message to Jimmy and saying, listen, man, we're good enough without you anyway. So this is still a very weird situation. I tried to look into a few teams that who could really use Jimmy and who would want him, but he's burnt so many bridges that it's just tough to see where he's going to go. So I think I think right now he has played his last game with the Heat. He turned a little coffee ceremony there.
I was just grabbing the video, like as you've been talking. I'm
Yeah.
grabbing the video right now.
Oh, well, play it if you've got it ready to go, because Jimmy, he's trying to sort of take little shots at Pat Riley. I'm like, man, this is not going to work. It's going to blow up in your face even more.
Yeah.
So
Here's the video.
Yeah.
Jimmy Butler at a some kind of event for, what is it, Big Face Coffee or something like that. Yeah. And a fun little exchange he had with one of his baristas.
He looks like he knows what he's doing.
He is. This is our best guy right here. See that? See that? I gave you a compliment. That's what bosses do. We build you up. We don't break you down.
I wish that guy would have like turned around like, "Oh, I'm your best guy, huh?
Yeah.
Can I get a raise?" And just see how Jimmy.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
See how Jimmy handles that situation there.
He didn't realize it was Pat Riley's nephew or something like that. And he's like, "Wow,
it's like Eric Spoelstra's son." Like,
right? Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. It wouldn't honestly surprise me. Because if I remember correctly, Minnesota, like the vibes immediately improved after they traded Jimmy Butler.
Yeah.
Philly, I think, struggled a little bit after they traded Jimmy. Chicago went into a rebuild when they traded Jimmy. So that's kind of apples to oranges here. But I don't know. I think everybody there in Miami is just ready for some kind of a conclusion. And there are reports out there now. Brian Windhorst of ESPN has done a ton of good reporting on the situation. That the Heat are prepared to bring him back because the offers that they have gotten to this point have not been very good. Good luck if that is how this plays out. Best of luck to all of you there in Miami. I do think I'm with you. I think he needs to be moved. I think he needs to move on with his career. I know he wants to go to Phoenix because it's the one owner who is still okay with paying him the extension that he wants. He can only get a 2-year extension because he's crossed that 35-year-old threshold. So, yeah, we'll see how it all plays out. But I don't think it's a coincidence that Miami would go on the fun little run that they are on right now without him there as the obstruction that he is.
Yeah, and they're 20-17. The Heat, basically in a tie there with the Milwaukee Bucks. So they're in seventh. They could find themselves out of the play-in and into the top six there. The sneakiest team has been the Indiana Pacers, who've got themselves rattled off 6 in a row. They're up to fifth right now, and they've only got a game or half a game ahead on the Heat. But that's the thing with Miami; they could get themselves into that position where, basically Jimmy has to come back and be like, well, you're not coming back to save us. Like we've survived without you. So if you're going to come back, you have to sort of, toe the line yourself. But of course, that's just usually not what happens. I mean, I remember when he left Philadelphia, he was basically taking shots at the coach, Brett Brown, at the front office. And that's unfortunately what he does. He hasn't learned his lesson there that, he's a great player. He's a great playoff performer, but he brings some baggage, and he brings that also how many games you're going to see out of him during the regular season. So with that contract with a player option of $50 million next year on the, you get that if you get Jimmy Butler. I don't think a lot of teams are looking at him right now and thinking for a 36-year-old what he'll be, that he's going to be worth it. So, but it will be hilarious if the Heat say to him, we tried to trade you, no one really wants you. So it's up to you to come back. And the Heat, being the sort of mafia that they are, will probably say like, okay, we'll take you back, but you have to follow our lead now. And it'll be interesting to see how Jimmy responds, because he tends to not respond well to those sort of situations.
Yep, absolutely. Another weird situation going on in New Orleans, where fans probably pretty excited to get Zion Williamson back. He had a great breakaway 360 windmill dunk. Everything looked fantastic. And not 12 hours later, we find out that he was suspended for not just being late to the to get onto the plane before they were getting ready to head out to their next road trip, but I guess is often rather tardy to team meetings and to practice and to stuff like that. I thought it was interesting that the Pelicans released a statement about the situation. I thought it was also interesting that Zion Williamson released a statement about the situation. There has been a ton of reporting and a lot of whispers out there that both parties are kind of looking to what's next, potentially. Zion may be looking for greener pastures elsewhere, and the Pelicans might just be kind of sick of him sometimes being available, more often than not being available. The conditioning has been a problem over the course of his career. All of that stuff. We talked about Jimmy Butler being kind of a headache sometimes. He at least has some playoff performances that the organizations he's played for are like, you know what? He's a headache, but we could take Excedrin, and he's really good in the postseason. The Pelicans, I think, at this point are like, it doesn't matter what we take. We've tried Botox, we've tried Excedrin, we've tried all these things. The headache just won't go away. What do you think? What do you think the final outcome is here with between Zion and New Orleans?
It's the same thing. I think that the Pelicans absolutely would trade him if they could, because right now there's just too much baggage there. That's like, what is the best outcome you're going to see? Because the injuries happen to players, like Blake Griffin. Remember, he got injured in his first year and missed it the entire year, broke his knee cap there. And then he came back and he was just incredible. Remember, for those first 4 or 5 seasons, Blake Griffin was an incredible player, and he was in incredible shape, and he was fun. And now he didn't get there in the end, whatever. But Zion, it's like your injuries seem to be a product of your poor conditioning and poor diet, and poor attitude. And on top of that, the things that are 100% in your control that should be non-negotiable are like, be on time, at least. If you're not playing, exactly. Be in the locker room, be in the training room, be on the bus, the plane, whatever, because you're being paid a franchise player's salary. So those sorts of things are virtually non-negotiable under any circumstances. You're supposed to at least be a leader as best you can while you're rehabbing your body, while you're getting, yourself right. So you need to be, once the franchise pays you that money, they expect those things as a minimum. And if he's not performing like that, and then when he does come back and he has the great dunk, now they sat him out the next night, fine, load management, but then suspending him the next day, it's like, God, how can you miss those things? I mean, what else are you doing in your life that, okay, again, miss one, say it snowed, what, snowed, I couldn't get out of the driveway, like, okay, fine. But it was a multiple instances that must have just really pushed Dave Griffin and Gail Benson to the absolute maximum, where they're like, if this guy doesn't play and we're going to have to suspend him when he does play, like that's the sort of thing. They couldn't even, sort of just sweep it under the carpet and say, look, let's just pretend it's load management or whatever. It's like, no, we need to suspend him to maybe send a message. And you're right, he released a statement himself, but that doesn't mean anything. What matters is how he behaves from now on. Saying you're sorry to the fans and your team and all that, it doesn't mean anything. Like, just show up on time. You cannot possibly behave like this when the franchise has stood by you through all of this. And David Griffin has not said a bad word about him. He's been as loyal and as quiet and as deliberate as he can be. But they must be just at their wits' end. So it's the same thing, though. I mean, I remember I understand that they tried to offer him to the Spurs when Wembanyama was available, and I think R.C. Buford would attach 3 unprotected first-round picks. No way. We just don't want him. And that's where they are right now. So maybe there could be a Heat for, a Zion for Jimmy Butler deal there. See if the Heat can turn around Zion and see if the Pels can get something out of Jimmy Butler. But again, it's already the season's
my only
already
request,
over.
if that is how this turns out, my only request would be that they televise him taking the conditioning test. That's
Yeah.
all I'm looking for.
Yeah,
Like the
yeah.
the Heat famously have their conditioning test. I need to see Zion take that thing.
Oh, yeah, yeah. But that's the thing. I think, the season's already lost now for the Pels. Everyone's lining up to try to get Cooper Flag. So, if you're the Pels, it's like, well, if we can get any sort of compensation for Zion, maybe we cash in and try to start again because, it's a lost season. They've got quite a few interesting trade candidates there, I would say, because, I think CJ, I think Brandon Ingram have got some interest and some value on the trade market. They may as well lean full on into the tank right now and try to start again next season.
Yeah. Here's where I get especially frustrated with Zion. It's on two fronts. If we look at this from like a macro health of the league standpoint, when he came into the NBA, he was appointment viewing, and the league put him in countless nationally televised games because they knew that the he came with a ratings bump.
Yeah.
But because he didn't condition well enough and because he didn't take himself seriously enough as a professional, he made those games basically unwatchable because it was a bad Pelicans team that also didn't have Zion Williamson, and those what would have been appointment viewing nights were just like, oh well, we're gonna see a broken down Pelicans team play against the Lakers, and I think he has had a very real negative impact on the league as a whole because of his lack of professionalism and the conditioning stuff.
Yeah.
But then also, like, from an organizational standpoint, the Pelicans have had the season from hell, right? Herb Jones just went down.
Yeah.
They, at one point, their entire starting lineup was sidelined with various maladies and stuff like that.
While Dyson Daniels was absolutely lighting it up for the Hawks.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yes. But when you're going through the things that the Pelicans are going through this year, that's when you look to your superstar.
Yeah.
Hey, could you just put us on your back for a little bit while everybody else gets healthy? And Zion's like, no, actually, my hammy hurts because you asked me to do a wind sprint the other day.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's just so frustrating to watch this guy just like clearly not get it, and it's a really poorly kept secret. He wants to go to New York. He wants to be a Knick. Zion, tell you what, bud, I'll stare right into the camera here. If you go to New York and you pull the stuff that you have pulled your entire time in New Orleans, that fan base will eat you alive. Like they will feast on your reputation. And I don't think you want those problems. Like, figure it out in New Orleans.
Yeah.
Get some better habits in place. Get on a better diet. Actually go out and do some good conditioning. And I know it's kind of hypocritical because I'm saying this while my double chin is like jiggling. If what it took to do this was conditioning and I didn't condition, Leigh, I give you full
I'm going to do the
privilege to rip me a new one for not conditioning if that impacted my work abilities here. But for Zion to be like, he was supposed to be the face of the NBA, like not just the face of the Pelicans, but the face of the NBA. He and Ja were supposed to be, the guys that, guided us. And then Anthony Edwards kind of came up out of nowhere. And but those three guys, you have Anthony Edwards, you have Ja, and you have Zion Williamson. Anthony, I think, for the most part, has done what he can. Ja had those issues that he had with Instagram Live. Zion has had his problems with staying healthy and his own off-court issues too. It's just like, figure it out, dude. To this point, he has gotten paid and he has been rewarded despite those poor practices. But he's reaching that point in his career here where his team might be getting ready to give up and consider him a lost cause. And given the opportunities that he's had in front of him, it would be a real bummer to see him squander all of them the way that he has to this point.
That's what it comes down to for me is like I say, injuries, can be just awful. They happen. And, we've seen it with a few guys get injured in their first year and then they come back strong. But Zion, to me, it's like, man, his attitude is just in the gutter. Like, he just doesn't
Yeah.
seem to care. And I remember his first game was here in Atlanta. I went down for it, and I was down there for warm-ups. And this guy, because he's always been a heavy dude, but when you're young, you can carry that weight.
Yeah.
And he'd come from Duke, and I remember him in warm-ups just bouncing up as if he was on like a
Trampoline. Yeah.
yeah, and it was like throwing down these dunks. I'm like, man, this guy, like, he's like Charles Barkley with the athleticism of Ja Morant, and I'm like,
Yeah.
he's going to be unstoppable, this guy. And it's like, but I'm also like, but he even then I was like, he looks a little heavy though. He's not just a big dude. He
Yeah.
looks heavy. And then he basically was down after that game, and he missed a lot of his rookie season. Certainly, the first 20 or 30 games, and then he came back and he was out. But you're like, okay, at some point though, his people around him are like, get rid of the junk food, get rid of everything else in your life, and concentrate on basketball. When you're 19, 20 years old, the number one pick, this is your life. This is what it should be. I spoke to Josh Giddey this season, who had obviously been traded from the Thunder last season, largely because he couldn't play in the playoffs.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I was really impressed by was Josh said, in this summer, I made my entire life basketball, my number 1, 2, 3 priority. I practiced, I worked hard, I listened to people, I spoke to, pros. I had people really help me focus on basketball, because he's a young player, and he's going into like a big contract season as well. Like, he can become a restricted free agent with the Bulls. He wants the big payday. And I was just impressed with his attitude, where he was like, this is my time to shine. I haven't seen that at all from Zion. In fact, I've seen the opposite, where he's like, well, I got the big paycheck anyway, because the Pels were like, well, we kind of have to extend him here. Because again, you everyone can see, like, just from that 360 we saw the other night, it's like everyone can see what Zion still offers.
Oh, 100%.
But it's like, at what price and at what cost? And now, this far into his career, it's like, it may not ever come, and that's what's really disappointing and frustrating. It's like, my God, man, when he was like Wemby, well over a year before the draft, was like, if whoever gets number 1 is taking Zion, there's no question anyone's taking anybody else. Even Ja was obviously really good, but it was like Zion in a canter. And I remember when David Griffin got in the draft lottery, and it was like, there's no question who we're taking, but now when you look back at it, you're like, if you'd known the attitude and the sort of like who really cares, you probably, he's going to drop well in the draft, because there's just not the reward for the risk of what you're getting with him. So I hope he's still young enough. And again, you see the 360 and you're like, okay, he's still got some time here to really turn it around. But you just wonder if the attitude
He's got to
hasn't
care.
kicked in. Yeah, if it hasn't kicked in yet, what is it going to take for him to show that he's got it?
Yeah, I remember the Dodgers had a player named Yasiel Puig, who had
him,
all of the tools to be a special player. Burst onto the scenes. He was one of Vince Scully's like absolute favorite players.
Yeah,
but he was a complete knucklehead. And I remember they traded him, and I remember when they traded him, I was like, all right, this can go one of two ways. Either this guy can be woken up by the fact that, like, this team just kind of set him aside, or he's going to blame them and continue to be immature and all those things. But either way, he's not my problem anymore. Right. At that time, I was covering the Dodgers. So it was like, especially happy, just like, all right, we're good.
Yeah. He went to Cleveland.
We all can move on with our lives. He no longer mattered, right?
Yeah.
He never stuck in a different organization, never learned how to hit, still has some very special skills defensively, but it's just, I think he played baseball in like Mexico most recently.
He's Cuban though, wasn't he? Isn't he?
Yeah.
Because I remember him on the Dodgers, and they said this rookie, and he looked huge, and he was smacking home runs left and right, wasn't he, at the start?
Yeah.
And then I
he
remember
had an insane rookie season. Yeah. He was so much fun. So at that time I was running Dodgers Nation, and I went to spring training one day, and they were doing outfield throwing drills, and they were getting ready. So, like, outfield throwing drills, like you balls are hit to left field and then center
Yeah.
field and then right field. Well, he played right field, and when it was time for the right fielders to throw, the like Dodgers assistant coaches and stuff like that came over, and trainers and stuff like that came over to us in the media, because we were all kind of we had all gathered alongside the left field fence, which ran opposite to where the right fielders were throwing. And the Dodgers people came over and they're like, hey, just so you guys know, like, Yasiel's going to be throwing here. He throws really hard. If that ball hits you, you might die. So like we all kind of like moved aside and stuff like that. And I'll never forget, standing there on the fence, and the first ball goes to Yasiel. He catches it and throws a laser, just a frozen rope. Incredible throw.
Yeah.
And you could hear it leave his fingers. You like, he is a good, I'd say like 75 yards, 100 yards away from us. And the ball leaves his fingertips, and you hear from way over there.
Yeah.
Like that whistle that it makes,
Yeah.
And then, so Justin Turner was the Dodgers' third baseman there, and caught the ball on his palm. He goes, mother bleeper, Yasiel. He throws his glove down.
Yeah.
It's just absolutely astonishing talent, but he never understood. He never got it. He never got the professional aspect of playing in the major leagues. And I'm concerned here that Zion is going to go the same way, right? We all have moments where we've seen Zion do stuff that we have just never seen somebody his size do. And, he's going to get moved, I think, at some point here in the next year or so. And it's either going to wake him up and, have him come to grips with the fact that this organization gave up on him. He was too much of a headache for them to try to be patient with him, or he's going to blame him and not learn from this experience. And we'll look at this player who just, kind of squandered some of the best raw talents that we've seen coming out of a prospect in a while.
He's got, I would say, 2 to 3 teams that'll be like, we think we can figure him out. That's what usually happens, is like, it didn't work out.
There's always one girl who's like, I can fix him.
Exactly. And then after a while, it'll just be like, nah, unfixable. Yeah. But I do, man, I saw, I've seen the talent and the athleticism, and it's like, it's still worth a shot, but probably not in New Orleans. By the way, did Raul Mondesi play for the Dodgers?
Not while I was covering him, but growing up, he was a right fielder for him. Yeah,
he played for the Blue Jays when I first moved to Toronto, and he was an outfielder, and he is the same, man. He used to pick that ball up, because I always used to get the cheap seats, the $10, and 3 free hot dogs and all that sort of stuff. And I remember this dude pick the ball up, and he would just fire it. You know, sometimes to home plate. And I'm just like, how is that dude able to throw it that hard, that accurately, and that well? But
those right fielders, man, those guys have cannons. Center fielders usually kind of faster, quicker guys. They have to cover a lot of room. But your left and right fielders, especially right fielders, those guys tend to, because they're back there to pick off guys who are trying to score or advance on sack flies, and those guys have cannons. And Yasiel in particular, the thing that always kind of amazed me with Yasiel is, because I played baseball growing up, I was a center fielder. And if you were playing in the outfield, you had more time to really bring the ball from way far back there and use all that torque and get the ball is moving as fast as you possibly could. Yasiel actually threw it kind of like a catcher, where the ball just kind of he started here, and it wouldn't go all the way back here. He'd start here and then boom, it just absolutely nuts. It would be fired out of a gun, and he just never got it. He never learned the lessons that he needed to. And I hope that I sincerely hope that Zion learns those lessons.
Yeah. Well,
really quickly, this has been kind of a downer of an episode. I do want to kind of end on a little bit more positive thing. Paolo Banchero came back for the Orlando Magic and looks phenomenal. Talk about a guy who has great physical gifts, who appears to have a good head on his shoulders too. I think he's going to be one of those faces of the league here moving forward. He came back for Orlando and looks just like he did before he got hurt. Here's hoping that remains the case.
Yeah, did you see him steamroll Paul George as well? He went inside there. Boy, man, Paul George looked washed in that. That moment. It's been an awful season for him in Philadelphia, and Banchero just basically went in, just like Shaq in the old days. Just kind of like just get out of my way. And Paul George kind of crumpled there. So no, but Banchero in Orlando. I mean, man, with the Wagner brothers as well, like they're still hanging in there in the Eastern Conference too in the standings, but. What a potentially good season is somewhat going to waste there. But if the Wagner boys can come back here soon, there's still some time. But either way, Orlando, things are at least starting to look a little brighter there. And, he's a very, very good player, very unique player, and good to see him back. So maybe get those injuries out of the way early, because they had the weird injuries there with their Bleeks.
Yeah,
I think
Bleeks. Everybody was ripping their abs.
Mo Wagner's done his ACL, so we won't see him again this season, but I think Franz will be back.
Mm-hmm.
So, good to have things going a little better in the Magic Land.
Yeah, I think Orlando is going to be one of those teams that is going to be way too low of a seed because of those injury issues, and they're going to have like whoever gets Orlando in the first round of the playoffs this year is going to be kind of tweaked at the fact that they have to play such a good team that is only there because of the injuries that they sustained to Banchero and then to Franz and then Mo also. But I love that team, man. They defend their butts off. They had that KCP edition over the summer too. Jalen Suggs is one of my absolute favorites in the league.
I love his defense.
Yeah, so they're going to be a team that I wouldn't want to see in the playoffs. They defend their butts off, and that's the kind of game that gives teams problems in the postseason. All right, let's go ahead and wrap this thing up with part 2 of your trip to Buenos Aires, which you got back from not too long ago.
Yes.
We had a little bit of fun with the fact that Manu Ginobili's court has a bald spot.
Yeah.
What else happened while you were out there in Argentina?
So I posted the first video today, actually, of the Manu Ginobili court, where I sort of talk about the court and the history there. And so this week I'm going to try to I haven't decided exactly which one I'm going to do, because I played a pickup game there and I want to talk about the physicality and the finesse of the Argentine style. But I also might show just another court. I went to that one off the top of the show. I went and shot around there. And I also went to this other really cool court in the La Boca area there. That's it's not really a court that you go to play on, but it's more a tourist destination, but it actually has a lot of history about the city and about why the colors of La Boca are blue and yellow. Very interesting story behind that. It really, because I love those colors, and I always wondered, like, why are they like that? And I found out. So I'm going to share something from Buenos Aires. I haven't decided what yet, but tune in on what day are we going this week? Are we going on Wednesday or Friday? Did we say?
I think Friday.
Friday. Okay, tune in on Friday, and I'll have some more information about it then.
I can't wait. I cannot wait. So that will be Friday. And that is going to do it here for this Sunday edition of the Basketball Passport Podcast. Another quick reminder, please do hit that subscribe button if you guys are watching live. I've actually been getting some notifications. Some people are actually subscribing. So to those of you who are just newly subscribed, much appreciated. Send us a note at the email that is nice and easy to remember, basketballpassportpod@gmail.com. Leave those 5-star reviews as well, wherever it is that you get your podcast. And until Friday, and I believe moving forward, we'll be recording on Fridays. I am Anthony Irwin. That was Leigh Ellis. This has been Basketball Passport. Have a great rest of your Sunday evening, everybody.